Well, we're continuing with section 4.2b, where we have the structures for the amplitude, period, phase shift, vertical or horizontal. And we start with y equals c plus a sine bracket b times x minus d parenthesis bracket, or y equals c plus a cosine bracket b parenthesis x minus d parenthesis bracket. And the A of our structure gives us amplitude, and it's always the absolute value. The B of the formula represents a period change. Now we know it's normally that's a B. We normally know it is 2 pi, and we divide by that B. Now remember, the B has to be factored out, and it must not be concerned with the plus or minus at the back. And then we have the C, which is the vertical shift, up if positive, down if negative. And then we have our last one, our D of the formula. And it represents the horizontal shift. And it's always opposite sign direction. All right, so we have all of the conditions about recognizing what's happening to the function. Amplitude, period change, vertical shift, and horizontal shifts. So now we're asked to find those values. So here we have a function that says to give them all of the information. We know it's in good form because it is in y equals, this is c minus the 1 sine of, and this is bx minus d. And we see we have an issue here, so we have to do math here. So let's do that first. Let me write it. Y equals 9 minus sine of 2x minus pi fourths. All right, so I'm going to factor out the 2, parenthesis, x minus, and I'm going to multiply this by 1/2, so it's pi eighths. Because if I multiply that, I'll get pi fourths. Now it's in good form. So let's look at amplitude. Amplitude is the absolute value of A. And A is -1. So the amplitude is 1. We're flipping it. Reflected. I should use the right word. All right. So then we want our period. Our period is 2 pi divided by b. So I've got 2 pi and b is 2. So I've got pi. All right. Looking good. Now we want our vertical. And it's our C value. And C equals 9. 9. Then we have our horizontal. And it's opposite sine of d. All right, so our d is negative pi fourths. So it's opposite sine of negative pi fourths. So it's pi fourths to the right. Okay, there you have it. Very good, class. Here, we're doing the same thing. And I need some room. All right. So this one is not in good form because we have to factor out a 2 in the argument. All right, so let's do that first. Y equals a negative 1 plus the 1/2 cosine of 2x minus 3 pi. All right, so I'm going to have y equals a negative 1 plus that 1/2 cosine. I'm going to put my bracket. I'm going to put the 2 out, so it gives me x minus 3 pi halves. All right, now it's in good form. All right, so we want the a. The absolute value of a equals the absolute value of 1/2. So we have 1/2. Then we need our period. Period is 2 pi divided by b. So I'm going to have 2 pi divided by that 2. All right. So this is period. This is amplitude. All right. So that calculates to pi. All right, then I'm going to look at vertical. And that is the value of c. And c equals negative 1. So c is a negative 1. And it stays the negative because we know it drops. All right, then we need our last one, which is our horizontal movement. And that is opposite sine of whatever d is. All right, opposite sine. I should put opposite because I don't want to confuse you all. All right, so in this case, we have negative, let me see if I can lighten that up. No, not really. Okay, that's all right. So we're going to have the opposite of negative 3/2. Of 3 pi halves. So we have 3 pi halves. All right. So you see where I got all of the values from that formula. And I hope that helps you, because now we're going to do more in graphing. All right. So right here, we have a amplitude of 3 halves. All right. So this means that I've got, if this is 1, then this is 3 halves. So because I don't have any phase shift. All right. And then I have a phase shift. Not a phase shift yet. I have the amplitude. Now I want the period, which is 2 pi divided by b, and b is 4 pi halves. All right. So I have the pi halves. And then I have the phase shift. Of pi thirds to the left. Because it's positive, we're going to the left. All right. So we're moving everything pi thirds with a phase shift of a small amount, which is pi halves. So we've got to have a multiplier for the division of it's going to be an interesting number. So rather than deal with the phase shift, I am going to use our argument form. For quadrantals. All right. So let me shrink this a little bit, and we're going to get to work here. So my argument for my x values, my radian measures, is 4 parenthesis x plus pi thirds has to equal 0. So if I divide by 4, I have x plus pi thirds equals 0. And then if I subtract the pi thirds, then I have my phase shift, x equals negative pi thirds. So this is my first x value. I'm going to do my second one, 4 parenthesis x plus pi thirds, sorry about that. And my next one is going to be pi halves. So I'm going to divide by 4 or multiply by 1/4. So these cancel. So I have x plus pi thirds equal to pi eighths. All right. Oh, sorry about that. So then I'm going to subtract pi thirds. And I need a common denominator of 24. And I'm going to get negative 5 pi 24ths. It's an ugly problem, no doubt about it. So then I'm going to have 4 parenthesis x plus pi thirds equal to pi. I'm going to divide by 4. Then I'm going to subtract the pi thirds. I need a common denominator of 12. And I get a negative pi fourths. And then I'm going to have the next one, which is three pi halves. So I'm going to divide by 4 or multiply by 1/4. And then I'm going to subtract pi thirds. Again, I'm going to have a common denominator of 24. So what this is going to give me is going to give me 9 pi 24ths and negative 8 pi 24ths. I get pi over 24, positive. Okay, and then I'm going to get then my last one is 4 times that x plus pi thirds equals 2 pi. And that's I'm going to divide by 4. X plus pi thirds equals pi halves. I'm going to subtract pi thirds. I'm going to have a common denominator of 6. And I'll get a pi 6. So I have all of my needed values. So I'm going to be my t-chart. And we're going to do a lot of math here because we know y equals, and we did the math for it, 3 halves, which is 1 1/2, sine 4 parenthesis x plus pi thirds. All right. So our first one is negative pi thirds. So if we put that in, I'm going to have the 1 1/2. Let me just put that as a 1 1/2 now. Sine of four parenthesis negative pi halves thirds rather plus pi thirds. So this gives me 1 1/2 sine of 0, because that's 0. Okay, and that's going to give me 0. So I got that one. Then my next one is negative 5 pi 24ths. So I'm going to have 1.5 sine four times negative 5 pi 24ths plus pi thirds. Now that's going to give me, I'm going to work underneath, this is 24 is our common denominator, 5 pi over 24, and this is going to be times 8 pi over 24. So this is going to give me 1.5 sine 4, and this is going to be, what is this? This is going to be a positive 3 pi 24ths. Is that right? And it is pi eighths. So if I do that, that's going to give me pi halves. That's 1. Equals 1.5 for that value. Then I'm going to do my next one, which is negative pi 12ths. So that's 1.5 sine 4 parenthesis negative pi 12ths plus pi thirds. So that's a common denominator of 12. That's 1.5 sine 4 parenthesis negative pi 12ths plus 4 pi 12ths. So that's going to give me 1.5 sine 4 times, and this guy right here is going to be 3 pi 12ths, which I'll cancel the 4, and I'm going to get a 3 there. So I end up with 1.5 sine of 3 cancels 3, so it's going to be pi, which gives me back to 0. All right. Okay. And then our next one is going to be, I'm finally in the positive, pi 24ths. And I'm going to have a 1 5/10 sine of 4 parenthesis pi 24ths plus pi thirds. And that's going to give me 1.5 sine of 4 parenthesis pi 12ths plus 4 pi 12ths. All right, and that's going to give me 1.5 sine 4 parenthesis 5 pi 12ths. Well, this goes to 3. And I end up with pi 24ths, 8. I made a math error. I put 24 and then I made it 12. I am so sorry. My brain. A lot of math. But I caught it because I said, God, I'm getting a weird number. It's got to be the quadrantals. And I didn't get a quadrantal, so that was kind of crazy, right? So I'm going to have pi 24ths plus 8 24ths, 8 pi 24ths. So that's going to be 1.5 sine of 4 times, and that's 9 pi 24ths. There you go. This goes in there 6, and I'm going to divide by 3, and that'll be 3 halves. So I have 1.5 sine, and that's what's going to happen. It's got to be one of the quadrantals. 3 pi halves, and I'm going to get a negative 1.5. Bam. Small error, I apologize. Okay, so I have pi 6s. So that's 1.5 sine of 4 parenthesis pi 6 plus pi thirds. And I'm going to have 1.5 sine 4 parenthesis, and this is 6s, so that's 2. So that's 3 6s. Okay, and that's going to be this is good math. Pi halves, so this will be 2 pi. And of course that's 0. And there you have it. I've done all the math, and it's accurate. So now we have to figure out our positions. So what I'm going to do is 12ths, right? This is negative pi 12ths, right? Because 24 is half of that. Negative pi 12ths. This is pi 6. This negative. This is, that's 2, 3, negative pi 4s. 5, negative 5 pi 12ths. 6 is negative pi halves. All right. And I think the most negative is pi third. Where'd my pi third go? Let's see. Did I skip one? Oh, well, of course I did. This is 1, 2, 3. This is pi fourths. 3, 4 is pi thirds. 5, and so on. Okay, good. I got the negative pi thirds. Good. This is positive pi 12ths, positive pi 6, positive pi 4ths, positive pi thirds, positive 5 pi 12ths. All right, here we go. Let's see what I have so far. At negative pi thirds, I have 0. At negative 5 24ths, okay, so this is negative pi thirds is 6, 5. Okay, that's right. Oops, sorry about that. That would be right there. Come on, pen. All right. So that would be in between, and I would have a -1.5. Then I would go to -pi12s, and I would get 0. And -pi12s, I would get a negative. And then I would go with, what was the negative? 5, 12, pi6, and I would get the 0. And then on the last one is that's the end. There we are. Okay. Oh, it's pi6 is right there. Sorry about that. It's over here. There you go. Got it. Posted the wrong one. So I would have this line here, this line here, and pi6. And there it is. Didn't draw it very well, but you can see it. All right. But you need to know for homework, the amplitude phase shifts and periods, because it'll ask you this information and draw it from your information. All right, by doing it by hand is hard. So here we go. We have completed this course. This section. And it is a section that has to be understood. Very little math, but recognition is important. Thank you for listening.